charity efforts at the moment?
So, I'm RD from Greenland, so basically what we do is we try to address the waste problem by diverting them away from landfill. So we found ways to recycle the plastics, even yung informal recyclers natin like the junk shops that they have no use for. And then we connect the others naman na plastics to other recyclers. So, kumbaga, everything that Greenlands does is basically to enable a circular economy. So, we're focused now on plastics, but our ultimate vision is really to be able to process all types of plastics. Para maging ultimate basurero ng Pilipinas.
I am Jonas, sorry, ganito kanina.
Passion din.
Passionate lang, sige. I'm here on behalf of the Laura Research Institute Manila branch. Our company is a management consulting firm, Japanese. So I mean, government in Japan. Konnichiwa. Yeah, and then, well, what we do at Nomura in terms of this topic is linking strategies of waste management to the overall sustainability ESG strategy and frameworks, and get them to really think about like creating an industry solution or an industry sector solution to problems that are related to the environment. This includes waste as a resource efficiency idea, not just as a way to be stewards of the environment.
Hi, my name is Raf. So, our organization is called Make a Difference, or MAD. We started as travel, which still kind of Carl will know. But this year we'd like to push for Make a Difference Earth, which I think encompasses better what we're trying to do. We're working on two insights. One is that people don't take care of what they don't understand, and people don't take care if they don't love it also, right? And so we are at the core a company that is education, but it's also in terms of connection, right? A lot of people in our country understand the problem of plastic but don't act, right? And what we found in the last couple of years, we've been giving talks, workshops, we've done cleanups, we've done connecting to different recyclers, is that the people who change policy in a company, in a school, in a church, are people who have a heartfelt knowledge and very deep mind understanding of the effects of unmanaged waste on our food system, on it getting hotter. So what we do is we use fun avenues to educate people so that they can connect with the lesson in a way where it reaches home, right? And then perhaps in an Asian or Philippine setting, that's very important because really we make decisions with our emotions, right? And so the education must also be equally emotional as it is logical. Our goal for this year, moving forward, is, and it's pretty ambitious, is to create, we call it Beyond Cleanup. So what we want to do is to do cleanups, because a lot of people are fortunately or unfortunately still at the cleanup phase, but also connect them to the list of suppliers that they need on a personal level to change so that they can reduce their plastic 1 gram or 10 grams at a time. And then to make sure that they're connected to amazing organizations like Green Ants, Plastic Bank, whoever recyclers present, right? Because the numbers speak for themselves. There aren't enough recycling plants for us to create, for us to keep up with the pace of plastic production, right? And so the chart earlier that was shown, the reduction side is so important, right? In that regard. And so we're doing our best to clean up. And we want to start at home by cleaning Manila Bay, Pasig River, and Laguna Divide, because those three bodies of water are connected. And if you calculate how much seafood they produce for us, it's 4 million kilos of seafood per year. If it's clean. Caveat, right? And now with rising food costs, I think it's extremely relevant for all of us.
Hello. Again, we've been introduced to our panelists, and there is a diversity of like things that we can talk about just in recycling alone, right? But I want to kick it off by asking, sorry, I'm very away from this question. No, it's slightly. But I guess what I want us to go straight to the point with at this point is, what do we not know about recycling or recycling trends, right? In terms of, well, Green Ants on how easy or difficult is it? Is there real value in it? With Jonas, maybe in the lens of EPR, because we were getting questions about, okay, national level enactment of a law. What can producers, plastic producers know about it? And on MAD, maybe what do we not appreciate or know about plastic and recycling that we should know about right now? So, I mean, that's a question. I'll give you a little bit of a moment because, again, we didn't plan this. But who wants to take it first?
I'll start first by saying that the World Bank did have a paper like about circularity and plastics, the plastic economy in the Philippines. And in 2020, they said that only 11% of the total plastic waste in the Philippines are recyclable or have been recycled, no, not recyclable. But the thing is, one portion of the report that they mentioned was that people who are in the informal community are actually very familiar with which plastics are recyclable, which plastics are reusable, which ones are not. Which is kind of surprising because that should, under Republic Act 9003, that's already supposed to be common knowledge among Filipino households. So where's the problem? It's supposed to be taught by the LGU. Unfortunately, who segregates here? But good for you. But does your neighbor segregate? No. See? So that's one issue that we have here. And that also creates a headache down the line for people that want to implement the rest of the value chain for wastes. That's actually part of the EPR law. And it's also creating headaches by the companies that are supposed to implement the EPR law. Because how can they trace properly the source of the waste, their waste? How can they properly trace their wastes or their plastics that come from them that they are supposed to buy back or to do something about it? And there have been very many creative campaigns on this, but it can only go so far because the private sector can also only go so far. And the mandate, even with the revisions on our Solid Waste Management Act next to the law, is still within the LGU. But what is the LGU doing about it? Diba? You now start to wonder, okay, what is our municipal hall or our city hall or even our barangay? And just to include something that Carlos mentioned, way back in 2021, I was part of a discussion on yung sa mga barangay na facilities. MRFs, there you go. And a lot of a lot of the city of Manila barangays were there because they were invited by UN Habitat to share their thoughts on MRFs. The number one problem apparently for barangays in the city of Manila is that they don't have space for an MRF because they were built before that law was created. And if how Metro Manila is one of those cities that are very, very dense, so the availability of land is also low. Therefore, how can they also implement the law apparently if there's no MRF, if they cannot even build the proper MRF, and therefore, start even the practice of segregation at home. It's a crazy loop now that now you hear about this, but somehow we have to break the chain, or we have to break the loop somewhere.
Just to bridge what Jonas was saying earlier. Get on your mic. Hello?
I think that you can hear me, Krisha, right? So just to break the chain, I guess, of all of this, right?
Like, I think I mean, not to plug. No, but honestly though, no, like, we've been working with the LGUs directly through this project, again, thanks to you and DB and all of the other stakeholders that we've been working with, and what we're realizing is that there are a lot of efforts talaga, like, hindi talaga nagkulang on the there are a lot of efforts, okay? Yeah. There are a lot of efforts, but you know what's actually missing? Connectors. Connectors. And I'm not kidding, like, seriously, just today, right? Like, we have serendipitous meetings of people. Oh, you collect plastics? I recycle plastics. Oh, you want to do refilling? I have a store for things that I want to do refilling for. You know, like, it's all of these spaces, these safe spaces where we can actually collaborate, where we can actually at least just explore, not necessarily commit. You know, things that we can do to move things forward in a systematic way. That's what's missing. At least in what I'm seeing so far, no. But I think there's also much to say about like, what is the role of local government unit, national government, all of these connectors. There are connectors talaga. What is the role of private sector, of citizens, etc. And we can talk about that in depth, maybe in the breakout session. But thank you, Jonas. Who wants to?
For the question, there are like trends that we've noticed. For Rina's point of view, generally with the passing of the law, talaga, it's really we're anticipating sobrang daming companies kasi medyo late rin sila mag-reach out, let's say, especially hindi rin naman ganun ka-actively nag-cascade or nag-disseminate actually yung new law. So we actually foresee a lot of new diverters coming in. And there are opportunity locally, so that's within the Philippines as well as internationally. So there are ways actually to kumbaga offset your plastic credits globally. There, it's called Vera yata, if I'm Vera. So it's really it's an accreditation system wherein, let's say, US companies need to recover their waste. Pwede nilang gawin yun sa Philippines. So syempre, you're earning dollars, diba? So that's very lucrative for a local company here in the Philippines. So those are two trends. I think na even non-traditional diverters or even manufacturers who will be required, especially this year because it's 20%, next year it will be doubled. And the consumption only grows with the population of the Philippines. So talaga we expect na a lot will be venturing into these diversion opportunities, and that's just one facet of it. The EPR law right now is not that comprehensive compared to other EPR laws, to be fair. So we're only at the diversion stage. Yung ibang EPR laws actually have points for recycling, for diversion, so iba-ibang stages. So we're foreseeing it to go to that level of, depending on the success of the EPR or implementation of the EPR law. So I guess if there are opportunities in the private sector, it's really, I guess, beefing up your collection in terms of plastic waste and eventually becoming a diverter yourself with the ultimate goal of ultimately connecting to recyclers if you don't have the capacity to. So yeah. But again, we don't see it as best is here and other recyclers are diverters here. So we don't really see it as a tight competition, as Raf said. It's really a big problem. We're happy to have more hands on deck actually to be addressing the problem. So we don't really say, oh, okay, pumunta to this diverter, to this recycler. We actually want everyone's help in this endeavor. So yeah.
Maybe one trend. The plastic credits trend is going to grow. There's someone who's doing it here already, plastic PCX. If you explore it, right? Perhaps I'll share with you some information I have from discussions with farms, the group that's one of the PROs working with the government. Basically, what the perspective that's coming across is like the EPR will evolve, right? Because it's phase one, right? And so whatever's written here now, you'll probably have another chunk written into it at some point. And if there are credits for those, if you're paying people to recycle it, then the incentive for not creating it in the first place will probably pop up at some point, right? That's one thing that I'm pretty sure will happen. Right? The other side of it is like, EPR law is unique in a sense because it's one of those laws that's actually being implemented, right? There are many laws here that are not, right? And perhaps what makes it very different from the other laws is the publicity and education of the population around the issues surrounding the law, right? And And you can trace it back as early as 2018 when there was a poll by SWS, and it came out 70% of Philippine voters are looking for an environmental initiative from their leader. That's 2018, right? And the movement to educate people on plastic started way back, right? And so you see the behaviors, the more basically the correlation we see is that the more educated the population becomes on this topic, the more they're going to force implementation or demand implementation from private stakeholders. And eventually it will filter into the local governments, because whether it's triggered by the private partner or by someone inside, I think it will push that way. That's one side of it, right? The other trend that I think will rise soon is the rise of alternatives, which is not big yet, but you're going to need a lot of funds going into the alternatives. Like earlier, we were discussing, Hazel, about you swap all the plastic in in your online store for paper, right? And I was like, where's the paper mill in the country, right? Well, but we need that, right? And so those are the things that need to happen so that the value chain, the circular value chain starts to build itself. Because right now we're at the starting point of let's just build the recycling plants, yeah, right? But we must also build alternatives, and then we must also build the mechanisms to just stop using it, period, right? In certain forms, right? I mean, it's not. I don't think it's avoidable completely, but there are many things that you can reduce. No? So I'll leave you now with one question. Our daily average here is 0.7 per person per day, 0.7 kilos, right? The question is, how do you make it 0.65 or 0.6? That's where we have to be at the moment. I've given up all bottled water. I don't buy ice cream from stores that serve me cups. I like the Loga Eshiman. There are just certain decisions you'll have to make at some point once you realize it now. And it's that specific, right? I mean, yung ice cream realization only came out last week. I went to McDonald's and I said, wala kayong cone? Bakit? Diba? Jollibee doesn't have it either. I was shocked, right? So anyway, but I think that's where the discussion has to go, right? And you know, just to throw an idea out there, if 100 people tag McDo and say, you know, if you gave us a cone, you'd reduce your plastic by this amount, they'd probably think about it. Right? I mean, how much plastic does come from the ice cream? Right? Anyway, these are just some trends that I feel like you should definitely look at it.
I don't know, I mean, ideally but I just want people from just having a conversation with that. But yeah, it's sobrang galing nga nung ganung insight because I was at this EPR event and I noticed how, you know, the EPR Act doesn't seem to be pushing companies to actually switch packaging to less eco-cost style packaging. Because it sort of, what was your carrot stick thing, like, okay, the fine is 5 million. It actually makes more sense than to pay plastic credits or go find the cheapest plastic credits, 5 pesos to a kilo. But then like you saw McDo sort of it sort of made me happy that they did away with the straws altogether and turned it into sippy cups. I mean, yes, it's still plastic, but it's now it's PET. And I was speaking to a Jollibee foundation, and I was like, sir, si McDo, nag-switch na, tinanggal na yung plastic, ay yung straw. Kayo, sir, wala ba kayong balak na ganun ko siya kinausa. And I thought like, hassle yan. Mas mura pang, binabayaran din naman namin yan sa, so that was that. And this is like all over the process.
Yeah.
Parang, and I was talking to like, this guy, dude, something else, joke. Dude, pati ka mag-supply kay John switch the packaging. Grabe, sobrang garat ng matcha niya ng I'm so sorry. And
cost thing. When you
It,
look at
it was,
Yeah.
but what would drive them to see it as more than just cost? See the social aspect, the long-term
Yeah.
aspect. The cost, actually, it's cost-benefit analysis. Long-term, mas malaki talagang benefit sa kanila. Sa inyo, ma'am, alam ko, sobrang mahal sa best. I mean, ang gastos sa best, pero galing na. But anyway, like, it would be that drive na pressing na, what stopped that? Bata pa kasi kayo eh. But nag-iis yung six-pack. What stopped everyone from using the six-pack rings? But then they shifted.
Yeah.
But it was because everyone was calling the Coke times, so it was a call out. It's really, I think that's the clamor, the public clamor. It's like more than the law. I mean,
The clamor triggers the law.
yeah, sabay.
I think there's always a discussion on what role we play, what comes first, chicken and egg kind of thing, but it all like, unfortunately, all has to happen all at the same time, right? And I know Jonas has a response, but can you?
Yeah, just three points. First, EPR law is the only law globally that was adopted by any national government. The other countries, they're only doing it as a scheme. We have it as a law. So that's unique already on its own. Second, the reason why it's not actually, having these ideas from McDonald's, even Starbucks is already doing it, is that under the EPR law, you're also trying to promote the industry of recycling. Part of the spirit of the EPR law, and I've talked to Christian now on this, the head, farms, and also in the national, so that those MC, and that's also one of the intentions of the EPR law, to increase the idea of recycling in the Philippines. Third point, a lot of companies have yet to really realize that it's one of the reasons why we need to reduce this is also a resource efficiency thing, and then the viability thing, because it's a pain to grab cheap waste, honestly, than to prevent.
I'll jump in lang. Siguro, on the cost side, there's this book written called Speed and Scale. Thank you, Angelina, for giving me a free ebook, audiobook. But they were able to outline the cost, the global cost of not attending to climate change, right? So I don't know the number for the Philippines, but I can tell you the cost of polluting Manila Bay, right? If plastic lands on a coral, it is 89% likely to get sick. That's pretty much 100%. 1 hectare of corals produces 1,000 kilos of seafood per year. So that's easily 200,000 pesos per year lost if you got plastic waste on your coral reef, right? Per hectare, right? Our country's coral reefs, all of it is in like class B, class C rating. Nothing's in pristine condition anymore. And it's hard for us to grow seaweed because there's plastic waste. Like literally in the seaweed farms in Tawi-Tawi or in Palau, they have to take out the plastic manually, right? That is the cost that currently CFOs are not able to put in. And my uncle's the CFO of Del Monte. So I asked him, because he's teaching sustainability in the I said, Tito, can I watch? So I went over. And it's funny because he was sharing that he took out all the plastic pictures in his slides kasi he's like, alam ko, ayaw mo sa plastic. No? But he was very real to me. He's like, when I have to present, I get it, but when I present it to my CEO, to my boss at the moment, I look at plastic, I look at glass, I look at metal, mababa talaga yung plastic. So the tax makes it incrementally higher. I don't know what it will look like by 2028 when it's 80%, right? But at some point, someone's going to have to factor in the cost of killing something else, right? Which I think is the bigger environmental science that we don't have, majority of us don't have access to it yet. No? Yeah.
Yeah, no, so just to, I guess, double down on the cost, actually World Bank released a research related to nature-dependent risks. And when, so we were in a conference, or actually we were hosted by DSP, and the Bankers Association of the Philippines was there. and they presented the paper regarding how dependent our industries are to natural resources. Again, going back to plastics as you mentioned, and how it degrades biodiversity. 80% of our industries are dependent, and if, let's say, for example, there's going to be nature-related risks attached to the credit rating of the country, will get immediately downgraded. So that's how. So it's not dollar, it's not a peso level information, but it's how dependent we are and how dire the situation is regarding regarding our dependence to nature and how plastic and pollution is affected.
Yeah. There are some very hopeful spaces in the Philippines. There's one town in Laguna called Alaminos, and there's this one town where this one farm that takes in all the wet waste of the local public market, all of it, including the innards and the bones. And because they take all the wet waste, it's easy to segregate, right? Because 50+% of the waste is wet. And once it's wet, it's disgusting to segregate, it's expensive to segregate. They're able to, what they do lang is they have 3 hectares of vermicompost, literally. It's just a big vermicompost pit. And then all the meats that are spoiling or rotting are fed to catfish, which they also sell, right? It's more efficient than boiling it and then like composting it. Right? So, sila, very interesting that their solution to plastic came through a solution to wet waste first, right? And I think that's why when you look at the whole waste cycle, parang the mapping that was done is so important. That's why you do have to see like it's easy to segregate pagpasa na, diba? Yeah. And so yun lang, parang we're hoping that these guys can scale, right? We work in communities and we'll start building these composting mechanisms in the communities. And then up north, there's a very cool biochar facility, right? What biochar does is basically any wet waste, you burn it at a certain temperature but so high that there's less carbon out, and then most of the carbon ends up in physical form. And it's 1 kilo biochar is to 2 kilos carbon stored, and that carbon becomes very useful for soil restoration. It's already used as a carbon credit in some companies, right? And you know what? You know what the cost is to? Yeah, perfect. I knew that info. I don't know. We need to find out.
Sorry, okay. Under regulations in the Department of Energy on waste to energy, yes, it is accepted under the Clean Air Act.
Thanks, bro. Pero the cost to replicate this is very low. And I feel like it's less than 50,000 to DIY. So anyway, it's something that a lot of these solutions are scalable at community level. No? Not to eat the plastic, but to make it easier to manage, right? And you know, parang starting in any of these points, wherever you are at or your organization is at, would be very important.
Okay, sige. Last, I have a homework. I have a homework and the last question, and then we have to transition to the second panel. I know you have a lot of questions. Please write them down. We're gonna tackle them. I swear, we have time. We just need to, move the discussion along, because what I'm already noticing is that you cannot just talk about recyclability. You cannot just talk about plastic. It's all connected. All connected. So my homework is actually quite simple for the panelists. Something that we can share to our audience and also to maybe the COP members that we met this morning, which includes, again, LGU stakeholders, private sector, youth orgs, educators, etc. Can you send us like a list of links of resources where we can find all of the basics, right? Because that's what Raf said. If we don't understand it and if we don't love it, it's really difficult to act on it, right? So if there were like basic, intermediate, advanced info on plastic, recycling, circularity, and the intersection of it all, I hope you can send it to me this week.
Sure, not
yes.
yet by this week.
Okay, fine. Next week. And then I'll share it to everyone. I have your email addresses anyway, so we can follow through with this discussions even afterwards. That's the homework. And my last question actually, so we can move forward with the next panel is, actually, we've been talking a lot about like challenges, what we can see as like hopeful things, right, opportunities. But if I were to ask you point blank, what is the value of recycling at this point? Because the challenge seems to be coming from everywhere, right? From producing it, kasi nga we can't keep up with what's already there. Edi address natin yung producing it, right? But I guess we are in the EPR. But what is the real value of recycling in your own practices, right? So maybe Green Ants first, and then Jonas, and then Raf.
Alright. I think it's value-wise, kailangan ba ng monetization? I think it's very important just because the problem is so big. I think I agree with the criticism sa EPR that it's basically allowing companies to keep on doing the same thing, basically just recover it. I think that's one criticism of the law. Na parang, why not invest in R&Ds for sustainable packaging? I think it really goes hand in hand kasi you can just eliminate plastic point blank. Wala kayo. So medicine is affected, healthcare is affected when you eliminate plastic. Not just food packaging, not just personal care, diba? So, I think it's a multifaceted solution talaga. So, in the case of recycling, personally, I think, if you can, kasi it's so hard to impose on other people. Kasi, for example, me, I'm a single household. So wala naman akong ibang, I can manage my waste because I can do these things na I think we practice naman to some degree, but I can't impose that on everybody. But I think I think the takeaway would be just think of your impact individually and parang I guess the value of recycling is, let's say, just within your community, if you live in a condo, if in a subdivision, in your own family, just bring in, start the conversation na parang why don't we start this in our household? I think the value, makita mo na ang dami nating gustong mag-help, we just don't know how to start or like if it will amount to anything, and I feel like yun, recycling really has, if you can, but generally baka more so just be mindful of your consumption. I guess that's more than recycling. Kasi if you buy so much clothes, if you buy so much food, you oversupply, and I know that's hard to instill, especially taas ng presyo ng lahat. So I guess the mindset is really to hoard just because you anticipate prices to shoot up. And I think kung kaya, if I guess, it's really just being more mindful of your consumption rather than forcing yourself to recycle. Because I feel like if you reduce your consumption, you don't have to recycle as much. Yeah.
Right, thanks, Marty. And I like that this is a lens on the citizen, on the citizen side of things. Jonas, can you tell us about the value of recycling maybe for companies, especially within work in Mura?
Well, actually, the concept of value has already changed over the years. Just a few weeks ago, actually, I did a webinar with the Institute of Corporate Directors on what is value in the first place. And before, we always see value as just what's in the product or service. But now, it's now transitioning towards something that includes the impact of a company financially and otherwise to local communities, to their major stakeholders. And well, this is an hour-long lecture, but in short, companies are already shifting from your old practices of, let's say, giving out money through CSR to actually creating a business that is molded around the community, the creating shared value concept, if you've read about this. And also, companies are now starting to be forced, if you will, sort of being pushed to incorporate financial impacts to their environmental and social impacts. So this is what we call the concept of double materiality. Before it's separate, you have your financial impacts and then you have your environmental and social impacts. Before it was separate. Starting next year, a lot of companies in Europe are being asked to incorporate both, merge both, and then analyze it. Okay, what's the value of my company in terms of all three? And it's going to be impacting Philippine companies soon because if they have an exposure to Europe, to European companies, then they will be asked to also participate in that exercise. Yeah. So will that happen in Philippine companies in the coming years? Of course, it's going to come here eventually. But yeah, it's also time for us to think about it in those two lenses. especially in the form of, especially in the topic related to PR.
Thanks, Jonas. Go ahead, Raf.
Nice. Thanks, man.
I like
That's
that.
so helpful. Perhaps the value of recycling now that I see is enough. I'll put my teacher hat on because I teach at British school, and we've been able to also do workshops in other schools, and it's interesting how like 11 to 14-year-olds, some of them are scared, but some of them ask really hard questions, such as, why are you working with the evil insert multinational name here? Right? But they're there. Right? It's so interesting, right? That they're hyper aware of it. Right? And I think recycling in particular offers like a very concrete example of circularity, but it has to be like, you have to be able to show it in multiple facets, and they must also understand the backside of it, because it's championed now, right? But as per, I had a conversation with the head of UNDP at the EPR launch and with Secretary Yula. I was like, what's the wage reduction target? It doesn't exist yet, right? Keep asking that, they're gonna be forced to make it, right? And I tell you, there really is a physical limit in our planet for that kind of thing. So it's an example, and we need to be able to create more examples. We'll copy naman, and naturally that's what is gonna happen. And even here, as we cross-pollinate ideas. So, yeah. Siguro one thing lang, like, because perhaps people here are more knowledgeable than the average Filipino on environmental metrics, or environmental science in general, right? If you have the opportunity to connect with a school where you can talk to their math teacher and say, can we change your math problems from potatoes and oranges and strawberries to like coral and coral and fish science, right? Or mangrove and fish science, right? Or forest and water absorptive capacity. You can, it's what I put it. If there's double materiality, then there's double layering of education here. Right? You get the math outcome, but you also get the science storytelling part, right? Because as long as I can remember, all my math problems as a child were kind of useless. Like the stories, no? The math is useful, but the story itself is like, it's make-believe. But what if we make it relevant to the local scene, right? So we can connect. For us, we're trying to connect with as many schools as we can to give that to public schools for free. It's an innovation in education delivery that I think allows us to make rare info into common sense, right? At least that's our try.
Alright, let's thank our panelists, Marty, Jonas, and Raf. Catch them later at the small groups. But we will transition to the next panel after a 10-minute break. We will start at 4 o'clock exactly.